So yeah, on this webinar, we'll be covering everything from the organization's point of view, with a lot of focus on managing opportunities and managing the volunteers for those opportunities. So let's go ahead and log into one of my demo accounts. I'm on our demo server, so which one is it? No, that's for Volunteer Action Center. Normally you would not get that certificate error. Okay, so when you log in, you start here. This is your dashboard. This is actually kind of gives you step-by-step what to do when you first ever sign in. Basically, you just start from the left and work your way to the right. If you're a free account, you won't have access to some of these items. In fact, most of everything, I think, under configuration. And yeah, so basically, you'll more or less just create opportunities if you have a free account. But for a paid account, which has all the bells and whistles, you start with doing things like configuring agreements. So these are things like I agree not to hold you liable for if there's an accident while I'm volunteering. Those kind of agreements. So liability waivers, things like that. Sponsors. So if your organization has companies which are sponsoring you, paying, helping maintain, cover the costs of maintaining your programs, you'll be able to create those sponsors and they'll show on your public pages, and what have you. Programs are a way to link opportunities together. So if you have a bunch of opportunities that all are about mentoring, you might have a mentor program or stuff like that. Or if it's all about tax preparation or education or something, and all these opportunities kind of go linked together, then you can link them together with that program. Some of the other things you can do is you can, later on when we talk about application forms and custom data sets, we can link those specifically to a program. So while we may not create an application for specific opportunities, we can make it so that if anyone signs up for an opportunity that has a form attached to the program, or an opportunity that's part of a program, and there's an application for that program, then they'll fill out that application, or custom data sets specifically linked to programs. And then set up agency opportunities and categories. These are just kind of the oddball nuts and bolts stuff, extra search tags basically that you can do. Most of them are pretty straightforward. So for example, we can go to agreements and we just give it a title, and then we can either edit the content right here now, or we can upload a file. We can say if it applies to organization registrations or volunteers, which in this case, that actually shouldn't be there, but that's only for volunteer action centers, which I don't believe we have here. So it's kind of like that. And everything we can access from the dashboard, we can actually access from the Navigate to dropdown. So I actually usually will recommend navigating it from here, but the first time you set up, you go from just left to right. So the way I actually did my outline was based on this structure here. So agreements, custom data sets, public pages, email notifications, things like that. We just saw agreements. Custom data sets are pretty cool. They allow you to create custom questions, custom data that you'll be tracking. So if you wanted to track when people got fingerprinted, which is what this custom data set does, it allows you to create a custom data set which can have multiple fields. In this case, it just has a single field, but you can create additional fields, text fields, yes, no, currency, so you could, have you volunteered with, this program before, yes, no, emergency contact. Well, that's actually one of the questions that separate, but I mean, stuff like that. Or when was the last time you had a background check or fingerprinting, or anything like that.
Question. Mm-hmm. So this would be part of the registration for the volunteers?
Yes.
The website, they would have
yes.
to fill out these questions.
So what you can do with this, if you can either make it, so what you can do with, so you can create your data set, You make it like a question, and then you implant it into an application form, which we'll do in a moment. And then when you attach that application form to an opportunity, when someone signs up for the opportunity, then they will be required, especially if you make it required, to fill out this question so that you can then search by it, report it. Yeah, so you'll create your custom data set, attach it to the application, and then, yeah. So those would be your steps. Create your custom data set, attach it to an application, attach the application to an opportunity or program. However, sometimes you don't want your data sets to be, actually questions being asked, in which case you can mark it as staff use only, and then you can basically just kind of tuck it behind the scenes and update it as need be. So something like DOJ, Department of Justice background checks for working with children and stuff, we aren't going to rely on what they tell us. We're going to actually run it ourselves. So we'll fill that in the back and later on. So once we've made our data sets, then we could move on to application forms. So I'm just going to kind of keep moving down the list here. Email notifications. The system sends out a handful of notifications automatically, and this is where you can find and configure those. So you can edit, what the subject is, who's sending it, the text. There's placeholders involved. So at this time, you cannot turn them off though. So mind you, if you sign someone up for an opportunity from the back end, then it won't automatically send anything. And this is for everything that's sent from when they sign up from the public site. So notifications, opportunity categories. This is the same as that. Issue areas, stuff like that. These are basically search tags that you can do. So there's a handful of default ones, but these are things that you can assign to an opportunity so that when people are searching online for their opportunities or for an opportunity, they can basically search, well, I want to know things that use certain skills or handle certain issue areas, also known as service areas. And I want to see everything that's involved with the environment. So these are basically another way to consider these are search tags. So yeah, and these will be assigned when we create the opportunity. And then programs and sponsors, as I mentioned, this is where you can create your sponsors. You can say who the companies are you're working with, and programs if you want to start linking kind of opportunities together, give it a name, who's administrating it. You can even assign sponsors to the program so that when you do your public site for paid accounts, you can actually create a program page and it will list what the sponsors are. In addition, you can actually do email notifications. So if someone signs up for a specific program, they get a specialized email. Pretty cool. Stuff like that. And you can make the program inactive if you want, or active or inactive, and write a description which will show up on your public site. But more.
How is a program then different from an opportunity?
So an opportunity is a single thing you might do. So it might be, volunteering at Credo Middle School doing tutoring. So that's a single opportunity. Or while the program might include tutoring these grades at Credo, then another opportunity which is tutoring different grades at a different high school, and they're managed separately. So
how would you sign up for a program differently from an opportunity?
well, you'd be signing. So what you would do is you don't sign up for the program, you sign up for the opportunity, which is part of the program, which makes you part of the program by default. You could also have created those as all one opportunity with no program. So if someone doesn't want to use programs, they don't have to. You'll usually see this more used by large organizations or volunteer action centers, but individual organizations, smaller organizations, mid-size, may or may not even use programs. But your programs, opportunity categories, stuff like that, sponsors, email notifications, generally speaking, you probably set those up once and then forget them. So what you'll probably do mostly from your day-to-day stuff will be configuring custom data sets and application forms and your opportunities. So let's actually go and check out application forms. So here we can create new application forms, or we can edit a pre-existing one. So if we want to create a new one, we just go ahead and hit the add button. We give it a name. So we can call this the mentor form. Sure. Save and close. And it will create a new effectively blank form. So here we have the mentor form. As with all of them, to edit it, we just click on the name. and start adding fields. Now, we do have a handful of basic fields and addresses, names, stuff like that. A lot of this is actually going to be duplicate of what's already been asked by the volunteer when they created their VolunteerEasy account. So basic stuff like name, email, address, phone number, those have already been asked by them. And so by providing them here, you're really only giving them the opportunity to either A, update the information, or if they chose to not fill it out before, get around to filling it out now. So if in the past they did not fill out address, now they have the opportunity to either verify their address, thus updating it, so they'll show their current information, or they can, put in the address for the first time. So, and so skills, photos, all that stuff. And this is where you add your custom data sets. So you click custom data set, you pick which data set you want to add, hit add, and here it is. So, here's your question. If this had been staff use only, it would actually be hidden from the volunteer, but it would still show on their application. That's of dubious use, but you can do it for your own purposes. If you ever want to if you ever want to edit something, make it required, you just click on it, you can make it required, put some help text, change the name for the caption, stuff like that. You can also delete something, so remove it from the form. And when you're done, just hit save. Form saved successfully. So at this point, I can go back to design application forms. And at this point, we can then start assigning the application form to opportunities. So yes, we can assign it to a program, which would have actually been done in the program screen. My apologies. So when you create the program, that's when you would assign the application form for the program. So there's a little bit of, I guess, a little back and forth. So it's not like a straight line necessarily. So I said it as you create your data sets, then your application, then your opportunities. Well, you will do that. So you create so the better order would probably be this. Create your opportunity, create your data set, create your opportunity, create your application form, assign your application form. And then if you have programs involved, then you might be going a little bit of backtracking there. Because everything's so interconnected, it's impossible to go in just this linear straight line. So there could be a little bit of back and forth like that. To assign an opportunity, though, to the application form, just go ahead and check it. Let's use that one. That seems more appropriate. And then hit the associate opportunity. And now it is associated, and now, if you sign up for that opportunity, you'll get the form. You can copy forms, and if it's not being used, you can delete it. Okay, so application forms. Alrighty, so they're cool. There's a paid account only. One other thing I want to mention before we go into opportunities is orientations and trainings. I kind of forgot this. Orientations or trainings are things that people have to attend before they can be a volunteer. So for example, if you require that your mentors go through some basic, training on like the do's and don'ts of working with children. Things you can and can't say, things you can and can't do, best practices, advice on mentoring, tutoring, stuff like that. You can create a orientation or training that the person will have to attend before they can sign up for the opportunity, or before they can be a volunteer. So they'll sign up for the opportunity, then they'll attend the training, then you'll approve the process. There'll be scheduling involved with setting up their schedule, and then they'll actually be a volunteer at that point. So this is another case of you probably want to do this before you create your opportunity, because that's where you will be picking them. So okay, so let's dive right in. So now we got all like the nuts and bolts, the background stuff you probably have to, stuff you want to do beforehand or afterwards. Now, let's talk about managing opportunities. So, we go to Manage Volunteer Opportunities, and this is where we can create opportunities. So here we see a list of all our current opportunities. We can edit, we can delete, we can manage, we can communicate, kind of preview. But what we want to do here is create. So whenever you want to create a new opportunity for people to sign up for, we go Create Opportunity. And we give our opportunity a name. So we could call this Credo middle, is it middle or high school?
High school.
High school. School tutoring. Tutoring? Ha! Tutoring would have something to do with being an Old English king. Not helping children. Well, unless they did help children, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, so we give it a name. We say which user is the staff coordinator for this opportunity, who owns it basically, and which additional staff members have admin rights on it. So, well, you as the creator, if you created your organization account, you've got, you've probably got the only account at this time, but you're going to want to create other accounts for other users. Now, depending on which license you may have, you may only be able to have one person logged in at once, but that's okay, because it's been that way. That's fine. You'll only have a person logged in at once, but you can still have multiple users. So, each one of your various staff members can each be their own user. They just can only be logged in at one time, or you're going to have two of them logged in at once, depending on your account. Free accounts only get one, and then the user licenses go up from there. So that's where staff comes in. This is where we say, what programs this opportunity is associated with, and if you need to approve an application before the volunteer is considered a volunteer. So if you just want people to be able to sign up, now they're a volunteer, and they can just start showing up or scheduling or what have you, and that's fine. Now, something like tutoring, you probably want to vet them a little bit, take a look at their application, make sure everything's looking good. So you would probably want to do approval required. So they'll sign up. It'll send you a notification. I've got someone to be approved. You'll go in, you'll approve them, and I'll show you where you do that later on. And then once they've been approved, then they go to the next step, whatever that happens to be. So at this point, save and proceed. Opportunity details. This is where this is PR, your marketing piece, your attempt to pitch your volunteer opportunity to people online. So this is what we'll show for the page for that opportunity on either your website or the Volunteer Action Center that you're working with website for free accounts. So this is going to be important that you write something up nice. I usually recommend just write it right into the editor. You can theoretically copy and paste from other sources like Word. I don't recommend it, only because Word does all sorts of strange formatting under the hood, so sometimes things will look a little odd when you paste it in. That being said, it usually will clean things up, but just a word of warning there. Okay, next step, positions. So this is where we start talking about the nuts and bolts of the opportunity. So when you create an opportunity, it's a good idea to kind of plan it out ahead of time. Where is it going to happen? What kind of people am I looking for? What different things can people do? And what's the schedule going to look like? So in positions, locations, and schedules and shifts, this is where we lay out all that. So the first thing we decide is, what positions. So if something like mentoring or tutoring, there'd probably be one position called tutor. But maybe you're doing different positions for the school for different subjects, or maybe but then again, you might also create different opportunities for different subjects. So that's also where it comes into play, is differentiating between, will I make different opportunities for different subjects, or I just create different positions within one opportunity? Same thing goes for locations. So this is something you'll have to kind of map out, and with your staff, and with any other organizations you might be working with, especially if you're working with schools. But if you are going to be doing positions like, full-time versus part-time tutor, or tutors for different subjects, this is where you can create those positions. So by default, you get a single position called generic position. Now, if you're a paid account, you actually get to create other positions. So you give it a name, like math tutor versus some other type of tutor, and then if there is a theoretical hourly value associated with it, like if it was a paid job, they'd make so much and you want to record that, that's where hourly value comes into play. And then position is your way of saying, well, this is what this position does. This also is useful for both your reference and others to kind of distinguish positions. So you just go ahead and create the position. Let's call it maths tutor and save and add new. And there's our position. Then we could put in science tutor and save and add new.
When you're a volunteer, you'd get to choose which position you wanted to apply for?
Yes, so you'll apply for that's part of where scheduling is going to come into play later. So actually what the volunteer does is they're just applying for the opportunity itself. So you might want to also say in your description like what the various opportunities are. And then when they get to go to scheduling, says you'll get the choice. Either you as an organization get to do the scheduling for them and then assign them positions, or they will be given the permission to do their own scheduling, including picking what positions. And we'll get more into that scheduling shortly. So the first thing you do is just create the basic positions. At this point, we've got 2 positions, so let's proceed. Next is the locations. Now, this is where you once again, have that decision. Did I want to put each location as its own opportunity or put them under one mass opportunity? So we either one location, in which case we pick, like Monroe Elementary School, maybe is one position. Or we can do multiple locations, in which case, we create one, save and add new, and then create the next one like Credo High School. And then put the pertinent information for that location, like the address. So I don't know what that is. It's something Southwest Boulevard. And at least give it a zip code and city. So that's sufficient. And then I can save and add new to any other locations. And then once I have all my locations, I can proceed. So this is where the real fun starts happening, is schedules. So at this point, we gave it a name, we did some description, we created our positions we need, the locations we'll be working at, and now we actually get to say when things happen for whom. So the first thing we do is we set the schedule for a location. So Credo High, when do we do opportunities for them? When do we do overall, when are they open for business, as it were? So in this case, maybe tutoring happens there only one time. It's a one-time deal. Or maybe it happens every week or only monthly, or it's ongoing. So ongoing basically says, this is how you'll handle kind of ad hoc. It can be seen as either a daily thing or it could just be it happens when it happens. Generally speaking, though, it's meant to do for daily. And you just specify the date range. So between this date and this date, every day this is an ongoing thing that happens. Chances are most of what you'll do is probably weekly or monthly. So if we do weekly, we get to say, okay, this happens every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And alternating, it happens, and then alternating Tuesdays and Thursdays. And like that. And then for these individual days, we could start creating shifts. But this is the overall schedule. So so this is kind of like, if I clumped all my shifts together, when would my total open days be? And that would be this. And then once again, we specify a date range. If it's monthly, then we can choose days of, which day of the month. If it is monthly and it's like the 5th Tuesday, like the 3rd or the 4th or something like that, then you'd use a weekly schedule. So let's go ahead and say that this happens for the next year. Okay, so this is our availability. I'm actually going to take off the alternate just to keep things a little tidier, and let's just make it Tuesday, every day of the week. So here we have a nice basic schedule, all weekdays for the next year. But then we can add date exceptions. So date exceptions would be things like the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, various other holidays. You can basically say that those aren't in the schedule, so we can add those exceptions. So let's go ahead and save this schedule. And what it's going to do, it's going to add it down here, and then we can create more schedules. And we can get a little bit fancy, and I could create yet a different Credo schedule. So maybe I have, my Saturdays and Sundays do something strange. Then I could go ahead and do that and create another save and add another location. Or not. Oh, that's right. I would have had to clear. That didn't quite work right. Okay, well, let's go back to the Monday. I always forget that doesn't work. I was thinking ahead of shifts already. So yeah, set it up for the total days it's available. And then let's go ahead and proceed to shifts. So shifts are where we get to get a bit more picky about like what days of the week. So this is where we can, create which days of the week. So we could do, let's say Mondays have a different time than the rest of the week. So we could do the Monday shift, which happens on uncheck all Mondays between 4 and 6. And it uses these positions, of which we only need 3 each. And then save and proceed, or save and add new shift. And then for the rest of the days of the week, we create a different shift. And then for your reference, it'll actually tell you a bit about the schedule up here to kind of keep you on track. So we could create another shift called normal shift, whatever. It's not the Monday shift, it's the normal shift. And that's everything else but Monday. In which case that might be from, say, 3:30, right when the school closes, all the way to 7. So it's a lot longer. And once again, it uses math and science tutors, but maybe we need more. And then save and add new shift. Or I could have done save and proceed, but I wanted to take a look at what I created. So give it a second to think. So, and here's our schedule that we created previously and all the associated shifts. And we can edit them, we can delete them, we can add additional shifts. So, now what time is flexible, what does that do? That basically says that it's not happening in between any given times, it just kind of happens when it happens. So it happens on these days, but the time of day might vary. So it might be in the morning, it might be in the evening, it's just whenever maybe the volunteer and the mentee, the tutee, can get together. And they just kind of work it out on their own. There is a word, that is a word, I checked it once, tutee. I've heard it in stories, yeah. So at this point, we've now got locations, we've got positions, we've got shifts, we've got schedules. And so, that's probably the toughest part of setting it up, is getting that all set up so that it is accurate and correct. At this point, let's go ahead and proceed, and we're going to assign search tags. So this is all those categories and skills stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, service area and issue area in the other screen are the same thing. So under categories, service area and issue area are the same. We need to get around to fixing that. But yeah, this is the only required field, so you say what it's related to. So this is children and youth education, and then you can say, okay, and you need to have, such and such skills, and, the activity type is, one of the ones that you created, and this will be benefited by, children in this age group, serving the, pick your population, maybe this opportunity specifically trying to help low-income children or something like that. The gender is going to be helping both, so you probably don't even want to bother using that one. And who is it appropriate for? So this is appropriate for adults and teens to come in and tutor. And we are allowing people to make teams, because one thing that volunteers can do is they can kind of come together and create a team. And basically when they sign up, the whole team signs up all together. You usually see that with companies who kind of abandoned, all the members of the company come in as one. So it's basically one entity that can count as multiple people. And at this point, once we have our search tags, save and can proceed. So yeah, search tags are important because they're going to help people find your opportunity. And so next is requirements. This is not available to unpaid accounts. Unfortunately, I kind of skimmed over a few things, other things that weren't available to unpaid accounts. but this is only available to paid accounts, and this is where you choose things like, can the volunteer do their own scheduling, which takes some of the burden off you as an organization, or can they log their own hours, in which case all you have to do is verify them, and does it require an orientation, and this is where we get to select the orientation that we created previously. So these are really helpful for taking a little of the burden off of you as an organization, but they do require that you have the paid account. So let's keep that in mind. I'm a big fan of letting volunteers handle that myself and logging their own hours. And then save and proceed. So here's our publication options. So now we're ready to put it up on the website. So if you have a free account, your only option is to team up with a Volunteer Action Center if you want it online, and you're going to publish it through them. Now we've got a handful of them in the area in Sonoma County, and there'll probably be more going over time. So you can go ahead and search by going to VolunteerEasy and finding them, or you can always ask us and we can point you in the right direction. But yeah, and whichever ones you've associated with, which I kind of skipped over that step, but we'll come back to it. You'll be able to say that I want to associate to that organization, and I'm maybe linking into a certain program. And then you can publish, and depending on whether or not they require approval before they post your opportunity, it'll go into their process. Now, if you're a paid account, then you don't got to worry about any of this, and you can post to an opportunity to an action center. Otherwise, if you're a paid account, just hit publish on, set the time you want it to show up, and publish. And it will be published, and then you get this little pop-up that asks how you want to proceed. So at this point, we can go back to opportunity list, and here's our opportunity that we just created. So, yes, so in this case, it is publishing to, what is it publishing to? It's going to publish to cbr.volunteer. It's good when it's a dot. .volunteereasy.net.
Do you create the URL?
Yes. Yeah, at the time of sign up, you'll specify the URL and all that stuff. So here we have it. Here's our more or less unconfigured page, and here's our opportunity. We can click on it, and here we'll see, the information about it. We would have seen the details if we had it, and this is where we'd start the application process. So I totally skipped over actually working on the public site. So I'll save that to the end because we're already on the roll with opportunities. So now you can actually start having people sign up. And so now at this point, managing your volunteers is basically the next step. So, after you've had volunteers sign up, maybe you've had to go to volunteers and go to pending volunteers. Maybe you've had to start approving people. This is where you'd see all the people waiting for approval. But most of your volunteer management will be done from the Manage Volunteer screen, appropriate for for each opportunity. So for example, Orientation Test 2, Manage Volunteers. This is where I'll see all my volunteers. I can remove them, I can edit schedules, I can see where they are. So this person's next step is actually do scheduling. So I can click on that and I can define their schedule. So they're going to be the default location for the afternoon shift, doing the volunteer position. This is the default for that shift, so they've accepted it. That's cool. Save and close. And now the next step is log hours. So, and if you wanted to put someone, say maybe they're doing 2 venues, 2 different locations in the same opportunity, add venue would actually let you assign them to another venue. Kind of cool. So we can look at their schedule. We can remove specific days. We can modify the hours for specific days. So maybe this day, they can't make it the full hours, so they're just going to do, 3 hours that day. Save, modify their schedule, close. I can, edit their overall schedule, and I can, basically same as add venue. I can add more schedules for different locations. I can go to volunteer details, see a bit more information, like a breakdown. And in all these steps, I can actually add hours. So I can log out. I can log hours by clicking on this. I can log hours by going to volunteer details, click on that, and this will let me log hours for for a day. So I can say on this date, between these days, they did this many hours, or based on their schedule, I can look at individual days and say on this day I did this much, this day I did this much I did, so on and so forth, and then save it. We also have quick hours. So with the quick hours log, this allows you, if I had multiple people, say between these dates, this person worked this many hours, the next person worked this many. So if at the end of the month you get timesheets that say the totals for the month, you can go in and say from the beginning of April to the end of April, Dex Ronan did 12 hours, and Cameron Mitchell did 17, and Sam Carter did 42, or something, however many hours, and just go down the line and hit save. And that's log hours. And then volunteer details is where you would get a bit of a breakup. So that's how you will be managing volunteers for individual activities, opportunities. If you want a more general view of your volunteers, you could actually use the volunteer list. So we show this briefly with the pending screen, but this also shows you all volunteers associated with your organization. And so we can do a little bit from here. We can actually reset, we can send them a password reset. We can see their username. So Bob says, I can't remember my username. You go, Bob, it was Bob. You won't want to know the passwords, but you can send them password resets. If Bob says, hey, can you sign me up for that opportunity? I don't use computers, or I'm lazy, or something. Then you can hit assign and assign them to an opportunity. So what not. If you want to see their information, you can actually click on their name, and it gives you a preview. It tells you their information and all that. If they've got custom data set entries, you'll see those. So this is a way you can check what they put into their application form. So when you approve an application, a volunteer, you actually see the form that they filled out specific to that volunteer activity, if there is a form. Well, here we'll give you a conglomeration of all the information that's ever entered by this contact with your organization or with their account in general. So if it's general information, it doesn't matter if they updated it with you or some other organization or just on their own, it'll show here. If it's a custom data set created by your organization, it'll also show here. And then if you want to edit information, we just go to Edit Volunteer. And that'll step us through. We can edit personal information, program information, interest areas, skills. So if they say, oh, I learned Spanish, go ahead and mark me down in Spanish. Custom data will show up either under programs or additional information, depending on if that custom data has been associated with a program or not. So it'll be in one of those two spots. So, okay, so that's the basics of working with volunteers. The other thing you can do is volunteer coordinators. So what a volunteer coordinator is it's a volunteer that's doing your job for you. So they're awesome. A volunteer coordinator is, so if you had, let's say, this was just mentoring in general, and it was happening at several different locations, you could then sub-assign volunteer coordinators to handle each one of those locations for you, to log hours, to handle the scheduling and all that. So you come to this screen, choose the opportunity and the venue or location, select the opportunity coordinator you want, so the account, or you can create a new account for the person, and then assign them. And so what they'll get is they'll get a new tab up here that basically gives them a opportunity list, much like we have, but it only shows what they've been assigned to and only lets them manage those volunteers at their location. So it's a quick little cheat to kind of help keep things organized and take a little work off of the main staff members. And so that's volunteer coordinators in a nutshell. So the other thing we can do is we can communicate with our volunteers. So we got a couple ways we can do it. We can go to the communication center and we can send broadcasts, which are kind of like shout outs that everybody will see when they log in, or we can send them individual messages, which is more like an email or text message. It'll go to their email, or it'll just show up inside their communications inbox, depending on their settings. So this is more like an email, and this is more like a person on a crate with a bullhorn. So use them as appropriate. But with messages, you can also specify who it goes to and what have you. so you can select recipients. But also, if you go to manage volunteers, or excuse me, manage opportunities, you can go to the communicate tab for a given opportunity, and it will let you message or broadcast just to those people. So kind of way to narrow in on how you're communicating. So okay, so let's talk about the public site. So let's go to design my public site. So this is where you actually get to do some configuration for paid accounts on what your site looks like. So we've got some templates, and you can adjust colors. You can edit the contents of widgets that we have here, like and what have you. When you create programs, you can have them be their own pages. And so you just mouse over and edit, and most recent opportunities will be propagated for you. So this is basically, just kind of mouse over things and edit as needed. And then we can use this color palette to adjust our colors as needed. So it's pretty straightforward, nothing too fancy. And I think we've currently only got the one template option, but more will be coming in the future. So, and this is what we saw a little bit earlier with this layout here. So this is it when it kind of goes into action. So that's the basics of working with the public site. So, okay. So let's wrap up with a little bit about account and profile. So my account is the kind of odd in that sometimes they cover the stuff that you think should be in the other, but this is where you can upgrade or downgrade your account if you decide that, hey, some of those features look really cool, or I don't want to be tied to a volunteer action center, or there is no volunteer action center around you. Then you can go upgrade from a free account to a premium account, which will give you, more options on what you can do. You now get the website, the web portal. You now can do positions. You can do, application forms, and you can let people do their own scheduling. So you get a lot for it, and what have you. And then you can go, and it goes up from there. If you want any add-ons like Time It or Text It, which are used for sending text messages from the system to people, or Time It, which is people get a PIN code, and that's basically how they can clock in and out from opportunities, then you can sign up for those. There are a handful of kind of pre-configured what we call tracks for certain programs that we have helped work with, and this is where you can sign up for those. So if you're doing Earn It, Keep It, Save It with the federal government, this is where you can sign up for that. We'll be creating more tracks as we work with more organizations for them, like Schools of Hope or RSVP and such like that. And then users is where you can create more user accounts. So while you may only be able to have one person logged in at once, you can create additional accounts, including when we create those volunteer coordinator accounts and don't just select a pre-existing volunteer, they're listed as a special kind of account. Or we can make more admin accounts for staff members. So that's my account. Manage profile is a bit more like your individual user account. So this is where, and your organization a bit too. So some of this kind of feels like it should be under account, but anyway, if your organization itself is helping in a certain issue area or service area, you can specify that. Primary contact information, so stuff about your organization. And this is also where you can associate to a volunteer action center. So this also doubles as a way to find action centers near you. So in our demo system, we have the Peaceful Place and the Volunteer Center of Sonoma County. So that's things you can do with account and profile. And lastly, let's talk about reports. So reports are your way of pulling up data. So we have 3 predefined reports, or you can create a custom report. And custom reports let you basically search by any field in the system. So we could search for everybody who's filled out a certain field, is in a certain area, or filled out a certain custom data set, or something like that, and then report on it. So we can get a list of volunteers, we can get a list of volunteers with the data in that data set, and so on and so forth. So you just go ahead and create your report, set your filters, and a handful of other steps. Not too bad. And then you can report on anything you need, basically. So, any questions? Okay. So, yep, that's all I got for this webinar. It's just kind of an overview of everything. Future webinars will go more in depth on individual topics and more of the nuts and bolts of how things work. So look forward to seeing you all in those ones.